abortion rights. Back to this issue of abortion rights. I just want to say, I'm called a tanky a lot. I'm a tanky. I'm a communist. Oh, you love China. Why don't you move there? Oh, you love the DPRK. Why don't you go there? Why don't you stay there? All this nonsense. You can pay my way there. I don't mind. I wouldn't mind that one bit. This place is looking quite trashy, to be honest. This United States of America. But I want to just say that anti-communism is the negation of history, really. I want to just show you a bit. It's just brief. I don't know if many people know which was the first country to actually legalize abortion. I don't know if many people know that in the United States. I doubt it. But it was the Soviet Union, 1920. The Soviet Union was the first country to legalize abortion. The Soviet Union was the first country to do a whole lot of things, actually. Gay rights, first to legalize them, first to inscribe in a constitution anti-racial discrimination. It was the first to do a lot of incredible things. So the Soviet Union really does deserve kind of like a history course revision in the sense that its achievements were quite remarkable. And we can get into that. Maybe I'll bring my colleague and comrade Carlos Martinez one day to talk about this, because we do have a plan to write a book about socialist countries, the brief history, but also talk about what we can learn from them, history and in the present. And that will be a book project for the future. But I want to just pull up, right? This is great. So Foreign Policy magazine is an absolute disaster. It is a neocon. I think, what is this? Is this CFR? I think Foreign Policy magazine is an arm of the Council of Foreign Relations. You don't quote me on that, but that's how I generally see it. It seems like it is. But it's a neocon outlet, and but what's great about it is that kind of like the Wall Street finance capitalist establishment, the foreign policy establishment speaks through Foreign Policy magazine. And here you have Roe abolition makes the U.S. a global outlier. 50 years ago, the United States liberalized abortion laws, and the world followed suit. Now it says today it joins Iran, North Korea, and Russia in rolling back reproductive rights. Well, this is what's really funny about this, because I want to show you a few things. So first, even though this is a really disgusting screed against countries that are fighting imperialism and are really targeted by imperialism, let me just show you what they say about Asia. Blah, blah. I don't want... Oh, here we go. First, post-Soviet Union. So this is how they... I don't want to read this tangled history of abortion. It's just absolutely gross. It's just propaganda. But in 1920, the Soviet Union was the first country to fully decriminalize medically supervised abortion while still declaring it a social evil that would disappear as the country moved toward communism. And I want to just preface this. They talk about abortion was called a social evil. So what the Soviet Union found to be evil was not the act of abortion. This is what you got to love the anti-communists for these. It wasn't, oh, we hate abortion. We hate that women and families and people are getting abortions. No. They hated the conditions that led to the abortion, because in the Soviet Union, when it first, after the revolution, was extremely poor. Civil War, World War I, semi-feudalism, Tsarism, right? These things weren't necessarily boons for women and for mothers and for parents, right? This wasn't a good social order. And so there was a hotbed of conditions that led to abortion, that led to women. So that was what the evil was. It wasn't the act. It was that it had to exist in the way that it did, right? That it wasn't really about choice. It was about necessity. It was about, I can't have this child because of economic reasons or because of the incidents of rape and just the abuse of women, right? That was rooted in the semi-feudal way of thinking and being. It wasn't the act of abortion. So, but even even with that anti-communist screed and ridiculous twisting of facts, have to say that the Soviet Union is the first country to legalize it. So I want to go to Asia. Here we go. So it says the majority of Asians have access to abortion thanks mostly to legalization in India and China. In China, the battle for reproductive rights has taken on a different form. And this is what I love. You gotta love the anti-communists and racists for this too, how absolutely low and vile they are. They're saying that now with anti-abortion American activists and campaigners are fighting against forced sterilizations and coerced abortions used by the Chinese government as part of a family planning program since the 1980s. Although national policy has changed, forced abortion and sterilization remains a major part of China's campaign of genocide. So China is one of the only countries in the world that has abortion rights for people at any stage of pregnancy. And actually, I was reading in CGTN because there was a lot made about in 2021, the policy changed slightly around abortion. There was a lot in the corporate media that said, oh, well, now China's restricting, China can never do anything right. So when China is legalizing abortion, it's coerced and it's a campaign of genocide, right? Family planning now is genocide. Contraceptives are available in the United States, sex education, all of that is available in the United States, but it's not genocide. No one's saying, oh man, you're really genociding those future children. But that's what they're saying about Xinjiang. That's part of the propaganda. That's why you have Adrian Zenz, who's a Christian fundamentalist, who no doubt supports the elimination of Roe v. Wade. That's why he's championing genocide and all that with regard to China. It's a complete reversal. It's like a flip. It's like there is no right or wrong answer. That's not what it's about. It's all politics. It's all geopolitics. It's all imperialism. So that's really ironic. And then, China was talking about how in 2018, beginning then, there was like a record number of abortions. And a lot of it was happening to young women between the ages of 10 to 20, right? And so China decided to change its policy and say, well, we're going to invest way more in sex education and in supporting these women so that they reduce not abortion in general, but repeat abortions, right? So an 11-year and 12-year isn't having sexual relations where they don't know about contraception, they don't know the risks, they don't know X, Y, Z, and they end up having repeat abortions. But that was twisted, of course, to be, oh, well, now China's getting rid of abortion, right? So no matter if China has one of the most one of the most broad policies on abortion, it still is labeled something evil. All right. And I'm just going to show you one more thing. I'm going to get off this horrible article by Foreign Policy. Just show you Cuba, because Cuba has had abortion legal for a long time, more than 5 decades. All right. And I'm going to show you, this is just a mainstream, organization, NGO. The International Campaigns for Women's Right to Safe Abortion said Cuba abortion has been safe and free for over half a century. So in 2016, 85,445 abortions were recorded from 12 to 49 years old in Cuba. Contraceptive use is high. 77.1% of women in stable relationships use it. The number of abortions today represent half of those which took 12 years ago. These figures now include men, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so abortion has been safe and free in Cuba for over half a century. The first abortion laws date back to 1936. But due to the social and government tolerance, private clinics offered abortions to Cuban women who could pay for them, right? So that's that. So the USA women would go to Cuba for this. So Cuba has a religious history, so it's basically saying that there was some pushback from religious groups, and it's a very Catholic, very Christian country. But in 1987, when Fidel took power, Fidel was, but anyway, the Penal Code, which is still in force, established that abortion is only a crime when it is done for profit outside of health institutions by non-medical staff or against a woman's will. So there you go. Cuba has legalized abortion, safe, effective, free. China, The DPRK also has legalized abortion. I mean, Vietnam has legalized abortion. I mean, these countries, these socialist countries, have legalized abortion. I mean, this is not something that's as controversial. It's not causing a stir like it is here. And I think that just shows you that the United States has something, doesn't have it. I'm not going to call it exceptionalism, because I talk about American exceptionalism a lot. I wrote a book about it. It's not American exceptionalism in the literal sense that there's actually something to really boast about. Oh, so special. But we would be remiss to not think that the United States doesn't have something very unique about it. That is both a reflection of West, the way that the West has developed over the course of its development through capitalism and imperialism. But the United States is very peculiar. And I think that it has such a strong ideological foundation in this ultra conservatism, in some respects, we could call it. I won't even call it that. It really is just the social basis, the social ideological basis for what is the most extreme form of private property and capitalist development. It is. It's the most extreme form that has existed. Now you could say, oh, well, Danny, fascism, Japan, Germany, blah, blah, blah. Those were all outgrowths of the world that was laid bare, in part, not just the United States, but also what used to be the most vicious form of capitalism, the Britain and the what, in Europe. So really, right, fascism is an outgrowth of European and American capitalism, just like a lot of these issues are outgrowths of this very problem, that there is, you call it capitalist culture, bourgeois culture, that comes out of hegemonic culture, that comes out of this vile system that's based upon the exploitation of man by man, of person by person, of Boston worker, of that's what has grown out of this. And the United States is religious zealotry, and the zealotry and extremism of the United States is that much more extreme. And now that it's in this period of crisis, we should not be surprised when things like this happen, but we also need to understand that this isn't the way of the entire world. A lot of the future, the countries that are really representing what the future of the world will and should be, this isn't a controversy, right? This isn't an issue. So that means that we are not alone here. And I think that's the unfortunate thing about what happens with issues like Roe v. Wade, abortion rights, sexism, white supremacy. It becomes all about it's become so US centric, Eurocentric. It becomes very individualistic. It gets co-opted by corporate forces, capitalist forces. And these issues can't be resolved or addressed within movement in political spaces, because you're then confronted with your enemy within all the time, right? We're constantly confronted with our enemies within, whether it's Democratic Party loyalists and the establishment, or just the influence they have on the greater body politic of the activist world, of the movement world, right? And so we have to find ways to make abortion rights, to make any assault on contraceptives, LGBTQ, all of it, it can't stand alone. It can certainly be a part of the program, but it can't stand alone. Because if it does stand alone as a single issue, as it kind of is right now, what look what's happening. Democratic Party putting on their tattered capes, full of lice and moths and all that, putting on their capes and trying to fly us into their graveyard, their political graveyard. That's what we'll get if we continue to go down the path in this way.